Alright lads, so let's talk about part 2 of the upcoming 9th anniversary. Before we even do talk about what the characters could be, who they will be, and the main discussion for today's video, let me quickly preface part 2 for those that are wondering, because I know I'm going to get this question asked, will be getting announced on the 26th of July. Since there are 31 days in a month, it should be getting announced on the 28th like usual. However, due to the fact that the 28th falls on a Sunday, it's very likely to get pushed to the nearest Friday on the 26th. So for those that are waiting to see what part 2 is before deciding to summon on part 1, you're only going to have to wait a week after part 1 does release before we find out what part 2 is going to be. And yes, that of course means part 1 will be out while we get all the information in regards to part 2 of the anniversary. So if you are someone that is low on orbs and you can't afford to summon on part 1 and part 2, I would then recommend waiting till the 26th to see what part 2 is before again deciding to summon on part 1. But that aside, let's talk about the 2 new skills that were data mined that can potentially give us a hint on what to expect for part 2 of the anniversary. So as always, called to see if he can. In this case, the first new skill coming to the game is read as Last Attack Damage Rate Extra Action. In this case, it's going to be a skill to increase the amount of damage your EX move can do. Now, one thing we did find out early today, again, once more called to see if he can, is that the EX attack is not considered a strong attack, right? So any buffs that increase your strong attack damage like Berserker, Frenzy +3, does not affect the EX move. It in and of itself is its own attack, right? So the only way you're going to increase the damage that an EX move can do is by giving yourself full stamina damage abilities, weakening the enemy, having an SP or attack boost, for example. Those are going to be the ways to increase the damage this EX attack can do. But it seems like this new skill that we are going to be getting here is basically Berserker for EX moves. Again, Berserker increases the damage that your strong attacks actually do. In this case, the EX move damage plus is going to increase the damage an EX attack can do. Now, this one could be actually very, very, very crazy because the EX attacks themselves, right, as we have already seen with Kenpachi and Gremmy, is that easily one of the coolest mechanics we've ever gotten in BBS, I'll be honest. Like, they're really cool, and each EX move that we do get is going to be different. I love this anniversary already, given the fact that both anniversary headliners, Kenpachi and Gremmy, have this new mechanic, and both are very different. And any potential future EX character we do get seems to have potentially very different effects with their EX move. There's a lot you can do with that, and that's why I'm going to be looking forward to every potential future release with this new mechanic. In the case of Kenpachi, it's an AoE around him and then gives him a 100% Berserker. In the case of Gremmy, it's a massive AoE in front of him, seems to do crazy damage, and it also does debuff and buff your characters at the same time, which is something that we've never seen before. Like, even as an SA2, debuff and buff has never happened at the same time. There's definitely a lot you can do with EX attacks, and I love that both Gremmy and Kenpachi does have it, but it seems now with this particular skill, wherever we are going to be getting in part 2, it seems like we're going to be getting another character with the EX attack. So that begs the question, what is their EX attack going to be? How different is it going to be when compared to Gremmy and also Kenpachi? But with this particular skill, the EX move damage up, it's basically Berserker, right, for strong attack damage. Berserker, for those that don't know, increases the damage that you do on your strong attacks. Likewise, Bruiser increases the damage that you do on your no attacks. Devastation increases the damage that you do on your Soul Bomb, and now it seems to make sense that EX move is going to have another very similar skill that increases its damage. Now, the EX attacks that we have seen thus far, again, already do insane damage as is, even without like any of these extra damage buffs because they have very high magnifications. So getting a skill already to increase his damage output, in a way, kind of tells me that maybe this upcoming character that is going to have this EX move, it's not so much going to be a unique effect, you know, like Kenpachi gives him an SP boost, Gremmy buffs and debuffs. Maybe this character, their EX move is going to focus on just doing a ridiculous amount of damage. Not so much buff or debuff the enemies, but just give you a attack that can almost one-hit a boss maybe. Now, with this skill in mind, knowing that we're potentially about to get another character with an EX move, that begs the question, who is the character that is going to have this new EX move? Now, I don't want to be the guy that quotes for Rukia every end of month or every anniversary, right? But in this case, I feel like it surely has to be Rukia. What we are seeing here, while most people, myself included, disagree with the character choice for part 1 of the anniversary, in a way, it does make sense why Caleb went with it. If Caleb are dead set on giving us canon characters for an anniversary, they're going to pick the most exciting moment from any core, any season of Bleach. And in this case, let's be honest, in 1000 Year Blood War Season 2, the biggest fight is Kenpachi vs. Gremmy. I would probably say Rukia vs. Esnot was more exciting, and I get this anniversary has been getting a lot of hate, rightfully so. But let's not say the Kenpachi vs. Gremmy wasn't like the biggest thing to happen in Core 2, right? And that's why Caleb chose that as an anniversary. Is that the thing they should have done? I'm not going to say yes, I'm probably going to more so lean on the side of no, but that's the thought process on behind Kenpachi and Gremmy as an anniversary. And with that in mind, that therefore means someone like Bankai Rukia, she's not going to be released outside of a big event like an anniversary or end of year. We're not going to log in one day day on a November end of month to see Bankai Rukia. That's not going to happen. She's going to be saved for big moments like an anniversary, and that's why I feel like she has to be released for part 2. While we're on the topic, right, it's the same with other big-named characters that are going to be coming out in the future. Bankai Senjumaru, I do not see her releasing as the normal end of month. Likely, she's going to be our upcoming end-of-year character. Bankai Shunsui, eventually Hono Salvation, Almighty Yuha. These characters are going to be saved despite them still being canon characters. They're going to be saved for the biggest moments of the year, anniversary and end of year. You're never going to see them as normal end of month characters, right? So going back to Rukia, again, I can't see them releasing her outside of an anniversary. So I feel like surely this is for Rukia. Her Bankai is an absolute nuke. Her Soba's most likely going to be exactly that, but maybe the EX attack could be another Bankai attack. So personally, and while I might be coping here, I do believe Rukia is going to be part 2 of the anniversary. And with that, I feel like it makes sense for her to also have an EX move attack. I mean, after all, in my opinion, Bankai Rukia is the biggest thing that happens in Core 2 A Thousand Year Blood War. And not having her be part of an anniversary, whether it's part 1 or part 2, in this case now only part 2, would be an absolute waste, especially because you're going to pair Rukia most likely with someone like Esnot. Esnot is one of, in my opinion, the coolest Quincy's. His voice standing and also voice actor makes the character infinitely cooler, so I would love to see him in part 2. And then again, you can probably throw in Byakuya as the 3rd character. Makes sense as an overall 3-character banner, and I'd be super excited for it. That's not, of course, guaranteed to happen, but that's personally what I'm expecting for part 2 of the anniversary. Now, with that said, let's talk about the next skill. In this case, unfortunately, it is another Brave Battle skill, right? So we're getting a Brave Battle character in part 2. Who's surprised? It's happened every single year. It's the one thing that's guaranteed in every anniversary. Every anniversary, every end of year banner is going to have a Brave Battle character. Now, it sucks depending on the character, right? Like last year, for example, I didn't mind Yamamoto being the Brave Battle character. For the end of year banner, I didn't mind Orihime being the Brave Battle character. It really depends on who gets the Brave Battle treatment, because let's say, for example, in a very bad timeline, Bankai Rukia becomes the Brave Battle character. We're gonna have a problem. But in the potential chance it ends up being Byakuya, well, I personally don't mind it because I'd rather Esnot and also Rukia get the spotlight as opposed to someone like Byakuya. But then again, in that case, Byakuya fans would be rightfully complaining. Now, this skill in particular, the new Brave Battle skill, is read as Team Battle Buff Debuff Canceller. So surprisingly, no ignore persistence. That's eventually going to happen. It's kind of been a joke that the next Brave Battle character will have this skill, but that doesn't seem to be the case. Now, it's very likely, almost guaranteed, that the next character we do get is probably going to have persistence, so there's probably going to be a 3-character persistence team starting from the second part of the anniversary. But interestingly enough, instead of going down the route of countering persistence, they're going after the buff and debuff meta that we are currently in. Most of the debuff meta. Now, for those that aren't aware, for basically since Broken's release, funny enough, during like the second anniversary, team buffs have always been the meta in Brave Battles, right? Every Brave Battle team had to have a buff character because overall it would give you more stats, 33% more attack, focus, and also defense. Very important, it's a way to give you the stat advantage. And it's been like that for the better half of like 6 years. In regards to the debuff attacks, they've always existed. Someone like Askin introduced the debuff meta, but then again, it never caught on. It was never really a big thing. And Askin, while a really good character in Brave Battles at one point, fell off relatively quick. Now, the debuff meta in particular made a massive comeback during the 8th anniversary part 2 with Yamamoto's release. More so due to the fact that he himself had a debuff, but he also had a guaranteed way to stop the opponents from using a buff SA2. In this case, having Lacerate and a guaranteed chance to inflict Lacerate against a Heart No Affiliation character, which in this case was strictly aimed at targeting Yuha Bark. Yuha at the time, and still to this day to be fair, is the go-to team booster for most people's Brave Battle teams. After Yamamoto, we then got Orihime, who had another debuff, and then we also got another character, in this case Mininya, who had another debuff, but this time on the Soul Bomb. So we're currently in like a debuff meta where even my Brave Battle team, again for the first time in like 7-6 years, I don't have a team buffer in my team because I don't need one, because every game I'm playing, my characters are getting debuffed. For those that don't know how the debuff and buff attack does work, whatever activates second is the one that gets prioritized. If I debuff you, lowering your attack, focus, and defense by 40% or 33%, and then you boost, you get rid of the debuff, and now apply the buff to yourself. Likewise, if you boost with your SA2, increasing your attack, focus, defense by 33% or 43%, and then I debuff you when now you've lost the boost and now your stats are lower. And currently right now with the 3 best Brave Battle characters all having, you know, debuffs, and also the 4th best Brave Battle character to a certain extent, Yuha, having a team boost, this new character seems to tackle that and just outright cancels buffs and also debuffs, like both at the same time. Now this could be a good or a bad thing, to be fair. I want to say maybe a good thing. It really depends on how you look at it, because you could very well well make the case that a debuff slash buff could give you a stat advantage over those that have max transcended teams. Because I've been in situations, right, where I clearly have the better team, I clearly have the more team power, I should be winning. But I lose because I debuffed them, they buffed, and they debuffed me, and then that way, they had the natural stat advantage. I lost to a team, realistically, I shouldn't have lost to. In my case, that sucks because I shouldn't have lost, but in the case of that one team there, they won. They won against a team that they shouldn't have been able to win against, all because they got the debuff off, and obviously the boost. They got the lucky RNG, and that's been the biggest problem with that, right? Well, yes, you can have a character with a buff and a debuff on your team, but you have no way to guarantee who goes first, who uses their buff second, who uses their debuff seconds. So that's why I'm going to say more so it's a good skill and maybe healthier for the game. I don't know, because even if you are building a team with a buff and a debuff to counter maybe more max transcended teams, it's not reliable in any way. I think I've more so lost more than won due to a debuff and buff going off at the same time. Most of my battles right now just consist of my characters being debuffed and the other characters being debuffed. No one's getting the boost in my games, and I would assume maybe it's the same for other people too. And with this character right here, this is almost going to be one of the more broken skills. It might not seem like a broken skill at first, right? But in a way, this guarantees you to have the stat advantage. Because if I'm using this character, you're not going to be able to get a debuff or buff off. Whereas I, on my team, could potentially use an SA2 team buff, give myself more stats, and then also debuff you. So this is going to be one of the more broken skills in Brave Battles. It might not seem like it at first, but having this character in your team instantly gives you a massive stat advantage because you're not going to be able to get your debuff and buff off. And I assume this skill itself, right, is going to work very similar to Prevent Brave Battle Healing, where even if they use an SA2, it just does nothing. So with this character in your team, if you use a boost, if you use a debuff, you just do nothing. And therefore, having this character in your team just gives you a massive stat advantage. In a case where both teams have this character, it's going to be on an even playing field. No one's going to get a debuff, no one's going to get a buff. So it sounds interesting. And again, in terms of what character this could be for, I generally don't know. I want to say Byakuya, again, just because my prediction is that it's going to be Rukia, Esnot, and Byakuya. And therefore, I just kind of want Byakuya to automatically take the Brave Battle hit. If I was to try and connect it to lore reasons, maybe this skill would make sense on Byakuya because he has the, Royal Guard outfit. And in the case where someone like Pepe tried to inflict his love powers onto Byakuya, it just didn't activate because of the Royal Guard outfit. It prevented a debuff from actually affecting him. Was Caleb think about that, and would that be their reason for giving it to Byakuya? Probably not, but if that was the case, that's going to be my headcanon. In the potential chance it does happen, it could very well be Master Masculine. I always see him being a Brave Battle character. I'm kind of hoping he's not, because I want Master to be playable, but he would probably be a character that would make sense to be a Brave Battle character, as much as I wouldn't like it. And if that was the case, maybe he's going to have a debuff SA2, maybe a debuff and a boost, because that could be possible now. And then at the same time, stop the opponents from getting their debuff and buffs off. And if that was the case, would that therefore mean the second part of the anniversary would be Master Masculine, True Bankai Renji, and also Bankai Rose? That would be equally as exciting part 2 for me, because at least for me personally, right, the 4 big banners from Core 2 that I've been looking forward to has always been Kenpachi and Gremmy, Mask, Renji, and also Rose, Byakuya, Rukia, and also Esnot, and also Sergeant, Shinji, and Bambietta. Any of those 4 banners as a part 2 is a W in my books. But personally, again, I'd rather see Rukia, Esnot, and also Byakuya. But we'll have to see how it does play out. But at the very least, we can confirm, thanks to these 2 skills here, second part of the anniversary is going to have another EX attack. One of the characters, or maybe 2, will have this particular attack. And maybe their EX attack is more focused on doing damage, as opposed to the current characters where they more so just do debuffs and buffs. Likewise, as always, we're going to be getting a Brave Battle character in the second part of the anniversary. And in this case, this character seems to be countering the debuff and buff meta. As always, in the comments below, let me know what you like to think about these new skills. Who do you think these skills will be for? I'm curious to know what you like to have to say. And I'll see you guys next time. Take care and peace.